Recording. Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Prepare to Soar series, part one, starting with self reflection. My name is Delia, and I work at the Career Center. Tonight, I will be assisting our presenter, Felicia Parks, and will monitor the chat for any questions or technical difficulties during the event. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen on Zoom to ask any questions, and they will be addressed at the end. You can remain anonymous or type your name, and Felicia will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. With that being said, I will now turn it over to Felicia.
All right. Thank you so much, Delia, for your help. My amazing colleague in the Career Center. As Delia mentioned, tonight we're starting our session. This is the first of a four-part series that we have created with you in mind. Those of you that might be graduating or thinking about post-graduation, your post-graduation journey. So this whole guide or acronym actually stands for self-reflection, opportunities, applying, and results. However, tonight, the series focuses on self reflection, which will give each of you an opportunity to celebrate your achievements at American University, strategically catalog the skills you've acquired through your courses, your extracurriculars, your internships, and more. But before we get started, let's start out with using our chat. I would love to know, how did you learn about tonight's session? If you could please comment in the chat. I saw it in the Career Center e-newsletter. It came across my social media page. I added it or RSVP'd based on when I saw it in Handshake or somewhere else. So if you all don't mind adding that in the chat, that would be great. We love capturing that. Got an email, got an email, got an email. Email still works. Lovely. Someone saw it in Handshake, couple more emails. Fantastic. So chat is the way that we will stay engaged this evening, because the whole goal with self-reflection will be learning about your preferences, your strengths, your areas of your improvement. And it's important that you think about this at any stage of your career exploration or development, because you're always going to be thinking through like what I could be doing next, or what are the skills that I've attained. So tonight's going to be really key for you to pay attention. I know that we live busy, busy lives and we're always multitasking. I'm guilty of that as well. But if you stay engaged, there's something in it for you in addition to knowledge. So let's move on to our next slide, and you'll see that we are offering a swag bag of goodies if you participate throughout our session by either asking questions in the Q&A, which my colleague let you know that I'll answer at the end, because some of the slides may answer the questions you have. And in addition, we'll use the chat for some of these quick things. So if you could take out your cell phone, or my colleagues are going to share the link in the chat, and click this, I would love to see what three words, or maybe they're adjectives, of how you would describe yourself. This is the first part of us trying to unlock the power of self-awareness and our accomplishments. So that's why we focus on that. That QR code will work with your phone. We tested it. So if you could definitely do that. I will also share so you can see kind of what our responses have been so far. I see some things are popping up on the screen, and you'll see it as well. So we have a few more responses that should be coming through. Hopefully you all are seeing this Wordle. I love these descriptions. And by the way, I have a second screen in case you're wondering. Felicia has turned her head and she's not looking at the camera. These are amazing descriptions. I love this. And even things like being nervous or insecure, we all go through those phases. People may have heard of the imposter syndrome. They're like, I got this internship or I got this job and they're depending on me, but now I'm not so sure if I really want it. So resilient, kind. Thank you for doing that. Really appreciate that. Keep those descriptors in mind as we chat, throughout this evening because you might find yourself using these throughout to kind of answer some of these questions, okay? So we're going to go back to the actual presentation, which is always fun when it likes to disappear. All right. So on my next slide, this is just a quick snapshot of a few skills, right? I'm not sure if you all have had a chance to attend our job and internship fair that we typically have every fall and spring. This spring will be virtual. If you've attended a networking reception, if you've interviewed with an employer, you've attended an information session, but employers are always talking about skills. And since tonight is about self-reflection, I thought I'd combine the two and say, these are the top 8 skills. They're kind of a little bit more than 8. When you think about some of them having a slash, that the National Association of Colleges Employers have said, these are the top skills. No matter what field you go into, employers are looking for these skills. So part of the reason why you started with those descriptions is, how have you used these skills in your classroom projects, in your internship, with your involvement with a campus organization? Or better yet, if you've worked in a job, or even if it was a volunteer opportunity, did your leader display these type of skills? And if you were able to provide feedback because it was a safe environment, what would you tell that individual as far as their skills in oral and written communication? Think through the things that you want to see. Part of self-reflection is also thinking through academically, what are some of the things I feel like I've learned from my class? AU is a hands-on school. A lot of universities are theory-based. So you have opportunities where people come into the classroom, you compete with other students with projects. Those actually count. And thinking through those experiences I mentioned before, being on campus, like what did that volunteer experience look like? I work specifically with the School of Communication and formerly with the Kogat's School of Business. And so a lot of times I was saying, hey, what did you do with the Marketing Association? What do you do with the Eagle? And then also your volunteerism, maybe you've done this while you're in high school, while you're in college. So some people are like, hey, I volunteer for Read Across America, and I go with Dr. Seuss Day and I read to children, and then some of those are honors and awards. So let's look at these individually, and I'll go over some of the highlights. All right, so we'll start with oral and written communication, which just overall, you want to think about, why is it important? How would your experience improve if you felt like you would respect the diversity of how people communicate, both individually also within a team environment? And in what ways do you feel like you could communicate in a clear and organized manner? Right. And then the third piece of that is, you want to ask appropriate questions and inform people, because part of communication, which some of us are bad at it, and some of us would probably be me, is taking the time to pause and listen to the individual before we come back with a response. So in the chat, I would love to hear, when have you demonstrated your oral or written communication? Like, what experience do you feel like you've improved as far as oral and written communication? Or what are other ways that people could improve in communicating with you? Did you have a professor that you had to go to and talk to them about your project, and you were thinking through some ideas and you still had to share those ideas with them? So feel free to put those comments in the chat. That would be amazing. All right, I hope I'm still have my crowd here. So I love the comment, improving communication with authority figures. Oh, sometimes that could be a little bit uncomfortable. Professors, employers, when I used to struggle with it, right? So sometimes writing out your thoughts before you have that conversation, especially when you feel as though, ooh, this could cause me to be in an uncomfortable situation if they ask me a follow-up response. Or one of the things I always said as a leader is, don't come to me with questions, come to me with solutions, right? So if you had an issue, bring up the issue and think through what you could be doing a little bit differently that would help us as a team, and offer solution. That way it's a conversation back and forth. And another thing is I use as a soundboard is family and friends. I go, okay, here's what I wrote. Here's a scenario with my boss or my colleague. What are your thoughts? So thank you for sharing that. All right. So for our next one, we're going to focus on teamwork, right? So you want to make sure you possess the ability to work with others to try to achieve a common goal. You've already had team assignments within your classroom projects. Well, alert, they still happen in the work environment. And you are often accountable for those team goals. Part of teamwork is still the good part of listening carefully to others, taking time to understand and ask questions, and also kind of demonstrating your personal strengths that would help complement theirs. So, in a teamwork collaboration, we're going to take it a little bit differently. What are some challenging things you've experienced with teamwork or collaboration? And this could actually work for this comment I just saw, communicating with administrators and superiors. Sometimes that could be a challenging situation. So, what has been your experience when it's been challenging to speak with someone in a team environment or where you should be collaborating? Or most oftentimes in teamwork, you're thinking about the challenging person. So then someone has to step up and delegate. So definitely consider that. So I'd love to see your responses to that. All right. So we live in a world where a lot has changed before and after the pandemic. And it was shed a lot of light on global and intercultural fluency. And that's been really key. So you've seen a lot of more efforts with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is an amazing thing. But think about how you individually contribute to an inclusive and equitable environment. How do you advocate for maybe a marginalized community? How do you keep an open mind to be with diverse ideas so that you appear flexible and adaptable? And how do you identify resources so that you can eliminate barriers and address systems of privilege that limit others? So I know that there's a couple comments you all have in here that, prioritizing the team and the overall outcome, that sometimes it's not fair, but you're accepting of that. And that happens a lot, even in this same skill set we're just talking about with global and intercultural fluency. And then also trying to negotiate different directions, right? So you have to find a really approachable way to say, hey, I like that idea. You acknowledge that person. And then I'm wondering, can we add to it? So I'm not taking away from what you're learning or what you're sharing. Can we add to that an idea that I have as well, which would be X, Y, and Z? So you want to add that. And then I like the idea that people have shared. I really struggled with my final AU group project because my group mates weren't meeting the deadlines. So how do you give a soft nudge without raising your hand to the professor saying, you know what, they've been a challenge? What you all have started to do, maybe not without realizing, is that you've started to identify your skills. You've already become aware of some of your skills. So in the beginning, I was asking you for your 3 adjectives or words to describe yourself. Now you can add new things like you're able to delegate, you're able to mediate. Maybe you're able to keep people together in a group. Maybe you're open to diversity and inclusion. Maybe you've been the person that's been a supportive teammate. Maybe you've been a great listener. So hopefully you all are thinking about some skills. So feel free to pop that in the chat. Like Felicia, I have started to notice as you're talking about self-reflection, how some of these skills are really starting to play in my everyday life. And then how do I communicate that? When we think through our acronym SOAR, at some point you may put it in a cover letter or a resume. You may use it at a job fair or networking event to say, these are the skills that I have. Now, one of the things that's sometimes really hard to measure is critical thinking and problem solving, right? Because you have to make decisions and solutions that are sound. You have to think through the reasoning. You have to kind of judge it. Sometimes it's in a fast-paced environment like we are in a career center. We're always evolving, always changing based on your feedback. We're coming up with new ideas, which is fantastic. And you're trying to gather this information accurately and anticipate the needs of others. And then after you do all that, how do I accurately summarize and interpret this data? So what has been your example or your experience with critical thinking or problem solving? Did you talk to someone within the team environment going back to that project where you really struggled? And I think that the initials were TD. Did you come up with some ideas to try to, I guess, motivate your group members to get with the deadlines? Or did you find yourself so incredibly frustrated that it affected your grade? And so I would definitely love to see your responses in there. Sorry. So as we move on to ethical behavior and professionalism, and this is another area where it's really hard to have a litmus test and say, this is what you've done, unless you've run out of the office with a ream of paper that didn't belong to you, or you were in the library and you grabbed a book that you didn't, check out. This is almost like self awareness of what you should be doing, right? So you demonstrate that you are dependable. That could be the times you're supposed to come to work. That could be the projects that you've been given and they have a deadline to it. You are trying to be consistent in meeting or exceeding goals and expectations. You're attentive to detail. So you may use some tools to check your grammar, or you might make sure your emails you send aren't in capital letters that are saying screaming. You act equitable and with integrity and accountability. You're present, you're prepared. It's all these different things. So my question to you all is, what is your understanding of professionalism and work ethic before you attended tonight's session? And then what do you think your understanding of ethics and professionalism is now? One of the things that we also teach in the Career Center, and I did this as a former recruiter, which I didn't mention a little bit about my background, is I taught an ethics class. And it was a big question around your personal ethics equal your work ethics. And some people have different spaces where they feel different places, and that doesn't make it right or wrong. For me personally, my personal and my work ethics are the same. So even if I go on vacation and I'm trying to figure out what's the best airfare rate where I'm actually on the plane and feel like I'm not going to sit on the wing, and I'm conscious of the money that I spend on vacation with my family, I'm that same way when I'm on business travel with American University. And I'm very much pinching, as my parents would call, pinching pennies to make sure that I'm having a good experience, but not costing a lot of money. So what would be you all's experience of ethics, where you've demonstrated ethics, whether it's work or personal or professionalism? Like, I'm always at work at 15 minutes before. I'm supposed to start at 9. I'm there at 8:45, getting my coffee, turning on my computer and starting. Or my class starts at 11 and I always stay behind and I talk to the professor. So I love that JG says, I'm definitely always trying to exceed goals. That's fantastic. I love hearing that. And that's going to be really important throughout life. So that's a good thing. You identified that. Build on that through your internships, your volunteer opportunities. Some AP said appreciating but not taking advantage of privileges awarded to me. Well, you know what? Sometimes this is also based on timing, right? So we have a lot of events at the Career Center, and I'm so appreciative that you all joined us tonight. And it just doesn't work because you have a huge block of classes. So you can't beat yourself up about that. You try to take advantage of things that you can. But then there are other privileges where you've said, oh, I should have done this because it was given to me and I had an opportunity to run with it, but maybe I was a little too afraid to do so. So I applaud you for recognizing that and then going forward. Now that I've reflected on that, what would I do differently to make sure I take advantage of all the privileges? There's so many things that are thrown at you as a college student. It's really hard to balance, right? But it's good training ground, because when you're adulting and you're balancing a household and maybe a family plus work, you'll rely on those skills that you learn when you're in college. Like, I figured out how to balance 5 classes. I was an athlete and I also had a part-time job, because it still happens that way. And then when I'm doing those things, am I ethical in all that I'm doing? Can they trust me with the corporate credit card, that I have? Can I also make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do when I'm working my internship? And then I'm not playing on the internet, playing, I guess, the Final Four fantasy games. So that's going to be important. Now, I'm not the most technical person in the world. I think some people who joined a little bit earlier, we were trying to figure out like how to get something to work with the Mentimeter. So when it comes to data and digital technology, You want to see how you demonstrate the ability to work with new and appropriate technology. You can adapt maybe quickly or manage technologies differently based on your field. It will vary depending on what you do. And you're able to support that in your decision making or maybe improve efficiency, right? So if I'm using Excel to track, the people that I interact with at a networking event, that'd be great for efficiency because I can follow up. I can use that same type of tracking mechanism if I'm applying for internships or jobs. And sometimes you're using technology to construct ideas or achieve strategic goals. What form of technology do you all use to organize your schedule each semester or organize your week? Um, I have a huge chart that I use in Google Drive where I actually have multiple tabs and I monitor my household budget. And I know it sounds scary. Since when I first bought a house, I started using that because I went to a session on how important it was to monitor your money and your spending. And I realized through spending, I was spending way too much on entertainment. And I'm sure I'm not alone. Just as I've heard from many people, I spend too much money on Uber Eats. So charting that made me realize, ooh, I could be saving this money toward vacation, or maybe, I want to get a new car. So what are some of the things you feel like technology has helped you in your field? I would love to see you put that in the chat because part of that self-reflection is maybe I need to take some courses, whether it's through LinkedIn Learning, and my colleague will send documents out to you all tomorrow. You'll definitely get a whole packet of everything. But LinkedIn Learning has a way for you to brush up on your skills. So if you aren't as fluent using Excel, or for my SOC students that I work with a lot, they're like, oh, I need to use Final Cut Pro, and that's an Adobe tool. Or with some of the COGA students, I need to use some more of the different technologies as far as I'm an accounting major. So I need to understand how to use those tools. So what are some of the tools that helped you in your career? So think through those. So we're coming around the bend with these particular skills. Leadership is going to be really important because when you've had a leader that was really effective, you found that they were able to inspire you, sometimes motivate you, even if you all didn't have a shared vision. And sometimes they're motivating you because you're thinking, I have a million things to do. I know this deadline is looming, but I really respect that person so much. I'm willing to sacrifice an hour of sleep, sometimes more than an hour of sleep, or work over the weekend to get it done. And if you're an effective leader, you're able to kind of plan and initiate and manage and evaluate projects, and then also able to build trust. So if you've had an opportunity to build trust, that would be really great because then people see a common theme. So I'm going to go back to JG. JG is on top of it with the comments, and so are everybody else, but I've been seeing a lot from JG, so I'm so appreciative. JG said, used my love of coding to explore my passion for economics through data science. JG, where were you when I struggled through micro and macroeconomics as a communication major? I sure needed that. So it's definitely great that you use the coding for that. So you're using the technology. Those are things you can describe about yourself. I'm really good with technology in other areas. AP commented, social media has helped me to connect with people and taught me skills to reach large groups of people and spread a message. That's amazing. I have a lot of examples for communication because that's the client base that I work with. But I take a group of students out to LA every year and we take studio tours and we meet with different film execs. And I always find it amazing how much you have to use social media in film, either to raise money, to actually have something that you can film, and then once you have the film done, to promote it. So AP, you're already on the ball using social media to connect. Now social media is so amazing. If you want to network, you can attend some of the sessions for employers that you want to work with as an intern or full-time. They sometimes have an HR session. They'll talk through what they do as an organization, and you get a chance to connect with them. So that's going to be important. In fact, my last slide is on career management. And one of the things that's going to be really important to you is like when I think through my skills, I'm the one who's driving the car. That's my career. So unless I have that curiosity and I'm going to seek these opportunities, I volunteer for events or participate in events like tonight, you all are already on the ball by logging in tonight. So I'm so excited. And then when you're on the job, you assume duties and positions that help your professional progression. right? So you get a job description, whether it's an intern or full-time, and maybe there's 3 or 4 things you're supposed to do, but during your lunch break, you go and you job shadow, or you volunteer for other experience because you're increasing your skills. When it's time to get promoted, or that person wants to get converted from an intern to full-time, they will think very highly of that. So when you sit back and look at your skills, what are you doing to build towards your career management skills? And again, these are those 8 key areas that a lot of employers have said, this is what I value in employees, whether they're part-time, internship, or full-time, and they've done amazing things to build our team, and they'll continue to be successful. So what other resources can you use to think through self-reflection? Because we went through those 8 pretty quickly, and I'm sure you have to digest it. In fact, I have a homework assignment for you all. My colleague will send out tomorrow a packet of information, and one of the documents is going through each one of these skills and is prompting you with questions so that you can continue to do your self-reflection. So I encourage you to do that at a time that works for you. Not in the middle of an exam, not in the middle of class, but when it's time. You also can do a follow-up with your career advisor, which I'll show that screen toward the end. So let's move along to all the different things about reflection, right? So how many people have a LinkedIn profile? You can hit your reaction for this. You should see up in the corner where you can put like a love or a check mark. That works too. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, the great thing about LinkedIn is that it has courses I mentioned earlier. Like I go there all the time to refresh my memory on how to use Excel. One particular course, which I know seems odd, is called Managing Your Design Career. But the great thing about that course is that, oops, I'm so sorry. I just suddenly went through all my slides without going back. I apologize. I was trying to scroll through to highlight something for you all. I so apologize. This helps you to kind of go through with LinkedIn Learning, and it'll show you with managing your design career, it talks about how to get a mentor, how to do self-reflection. Those things are all in that course. And there's other courses there in there as well. Also within LinkedIn, there's a section for recommendations. So if you have someone that you're connected to, there could be a visual of them saying, this is how I worked with them in a professional capacity, even if it's a student group. So when you reach out to people and say, what do you think I do well? And how would you recommend me for an opportunity? That could help you to see some of the amazing skills that you already have. So you could think through your group members from those projects, like, was I an eager participant? What skills would you describe me with at least 3 or 4? Talk to faculty that know you, previous supervisors. And if they are on LinkedIn, like, oh, can you put that in writing so that it's on my LinkedIn page? So if any employer checks out my page, they see it. Another one is discover your strengths, and that's through the Clifton Strength Finder. This is something where if you purchase the book, toward the back, they give you a code. But what I found, and my colleague will share in the link in the chat here, and it also will have it in your handouts for tomorrow. I found a free website that's very similar. Well, it will say, hey, you're great as an analyzer, or you're great in empathy. So those are great things to think about your skills, because depending on when you want to share that information, you can share that as well. So make sure when Delia is dropping these links in the chat, and thank you, Delia, for doing that, you all click them on your end and then save, because once we disconnect from Zoom, you won't be able to see them. So want to make sure you all have those. And those would be great tools. We don't want you to fill it out right now. Just want you to click it so it's live on your end and you have a copy of it. Here's an example so you can get an idea of the different strength areas that the Clifton Strength will show you. So under executing, I am an achiever, and I'm also considered focused. Under influencing, I'm a woo. Woo sounds a little weird, but it basically is that I'm an empath. And the other thing that came up for me under relationship building was empathy and harmony. And my 5th one was under strategic, and it was analytical. So if you all have ever taken any type of self-assessment tool, I'm going to talk about that in a second. The Strengths Finder is just another tool to help you figure out, like, what are the things that describe me? And you go through answering a series of questions through these links. And that way you can get a sense as to what are some other skills that I can actually showcase when I talk to an employer. So speaking of resources, on our Career Center website, we walk you through our career exploration and self-assessment tools. So Cliff Strengths Finder is not one of the ones that we offer. That's why my colleague dropped the link in there, but we do offer MBTI, and the formal name is Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And we also provide you with the strong. And the strong is connected to the Department of Labor and ONET. So there's all different ways to explore not only just where your career connective would be, but things that would help you with your self-reflection. So here's a quick snapshot so you can see it of the different ones that we offer. So Myers-Briggs, if you've ever taken this tool, you'll see that you'll get a 4-letter code, and it will indicate based on your personality type, maybe the careers you can consider, how you deal in pressure situations. I love that it has a section on there about procrastination because it talks about exactly what I would do, how you do in your career search. It's very extensive information that you get after your interpretation session with an advisor. You would just go through the Career Center. You'll get that in your packet tomorrow to sign up for the self-assessment to the Myers-Briggs. The Strong is a little different because it compares you to people who've said, hey, I have a career as a career advisor, and I enjoy my career. I don't talk about the skills that I'm good at or which ones I could improve, but these are the skills that I feel to be successful. And when they compare you, it gives you a nice list of 241 job titles, and then you can kind of do some research from there. Then there's the Work Values Matcher. There's also the Holland Code Career Quiz. And my colleagues are going to drop those links in the chat. So you're getting lots of great information tonight. So again, I'm so excited that you all are here, and you're going to click those links so that you have them on your actual device. If you're connected with us through a phone, don't worry because it'll be emailed to you. I saw the majority of you say you found out about the event through email, so you'll still have it. So don't worry. I know a lot of you joined through a phone or maybe an iPad, and then it's hard to save those links. Some additional resources would be common student experiences. So in your Handshake account, I'm sure you all logged into that because you were able to register for tonight. In your Handshake account, there is a tab called resources. So that's why you see that link. When you go to resources, our amazing peer advisors have written out common student experiences. So I don't know about you, but all my internships were unpaid when I was in college because I was a communication major. So I had all these additional jobs working in retail or, working at a local store or, working as a barista. And so they've taken time to describe all of those common student experiences. And that helps you with self-reflection still, because you'll look at the words and how they describe them. You're like, oh, that applies to me too. So speaking of our amazing peer advisors, they provide drop-in hours if you're an undergraduate student in the Career Center, Monday through Friday. These hours are subject to change based on their schedules because they do have courses to go to as well, or sometimes they're doing classroom presentations on behalf of the Career Center. And then our Career Center advisors, and we can meet with undergrad and grad students, we do drop-in advising in vendor library Monday through Friday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And that's in workroom 6. So as soon as you go through the front door, that workroom 6 is facing you right there, that first glass door. So you just come in there for drop-ins, and that's for great quick questions. If you have more extensive questions, I would definitely encourage you to consider scheduling with your advisor. So these are the advisors in the main Career Center. So if you are a COGOT major or you're in the School of International Services, you will not see your advisor's picture or link here, but whatever tool that you log into to request your appointment, whether it's through Handshake or through another site with the advisors, you'll see their availability, whether they do drop-ins. Last semester, and I'm not sure if they're still doing it this semester, last semester, SIS was doing all drop-ins. So I know that they had a system where you can go and see what time they were available, and you didn't have to worry about appointments because appointments were getting scheduled like a month out. So now they were doing the drop-ins in the fall. They may be continuing that in the spring, but I didn't have any information to share with you about that. But if you're in Kogod, the Kogod has their peer consultants for drop-ins, and they also have their advisors. So if you have any questions about that, I'll definitely would encourage you to contact your particular career center. If you can't find that, you can always contact us. We'll direct you to the right place. So whether you give us a call on the phone, that's our traditional, 202-885-1804 number, or our career center email address is just careercenter@american.edu. Real easy. And say, hey, this is my major. Who do I schedule with for a 30 or 60-minute session? So I'll now turn it over to my colleague who will tell you a little bit more about events for the month, and then we'll open the chat and questions.
Yeah, thank you, Felicia. So we have a few upcoming internship workshops, depending on what you're interested in. We have a Zoom workshop actually tomorrow at noon for education, social sciences, and communication. There will be another one on Monday next week at 6 p.m. on Zoom for government and public affairs, justice and law, and international affairs. And then there'll be a final one on Monday, the following weekend after that, focusing on humanities, languages, and arts, also on Zoom. So make sure to check that out on Handshake to sign up. And then mark your calendars, because on Wednesday, March 27th, we will have the spring job and internship fair, which will be virtual. And you can also sign up on Handshake as well. Now back to you, Felicia.
Thank you so much. So now the fun part. I know you all are eager with questions, so definitely let us know what questions you have, and we can answer it live. And as my colleague mentioned, you can be anonymous, or you can answer, put in your name when you ask your question, and we'll answer it. But I want to thank you again for participating in our session this evening.
Looks like Josh asked, do you recommend pursuing internships after graduation or seeking normal jobs?
Josh, that's a great question. And I'll tell you a little bit of a personal story. I was a 5-year student. I changed majors twice, and I transferred schools. So I had a postgraduate internship, much to the dismay of my parents. They were like, you're never going to start paying back that student loan, and you've had enough internships. Why are you taking another one? So the answer to that question more specifically, it depends on your field. Sometimes you can get some additional experience in a postgraduate internship because maybe your entire college career, you've had those retail jobs to help offset your tuition costs or to pay for your housing. And so you feel like you haven't had enough experience and you want to get that experience, you can do that. Sometimes employers only have a way for you to do that. So a lot of my journalism students do postgraduate internships because that's a way for them to get with some of the larger organizations. They do training. And other times people are just deciding, I'm not sure if I want to go to graduate school, so I'll take a postgraduate internship. Now, some employers will say you have to be a continuing student to apply for an internship. So just be careful when you look through Handshake or any other tool that you're still eligible, and then be very mindful of deadline dates. So it's completely up to your field and your experience as to how you want it to be. But I gave you my experiences. That I had one more internship. I already had 4 while I was an undergrad. I had one more internship that turned into a 9-year job. So fantastic. So Audrey has a question. I actually now I can see it and I don't have the PowerPoint up. So thank you, Delia. This might not exactly be what you're looking for, but I'm feeling stressed because I'm graduating a year early and I haven't had a job or internship experience in my field in college. What can I do to make myself competitive candidate for jobs and internships without experience? Audrey, I love this question because we were just saying a second ago, sometimes you haven't had those internships because you've been going to school, you've been focusing. For you, maybe been taking extra credits. So congratulations on graduating a year early. We also have a little bit of extra peer pressure at American University where everybody's talking about as freshman year, I have an internship. And I'm like, learn the city, learn the metro. Don't get an internship. Yeah, just enjoy life. So I know there's a lot of positive peer pressure, which is amazing. But if you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, not everybody has 4 or 5 internships under their belt. So if you haven't had an internship and you're graduating a year early, I also wonder, Audrey, if you've been involved with any type of campus organizations, because that experience counts. So let's say you were a member of the American Marketing Association I mentioned before, and you arranged for speakers. Well, that's going to talk about your organizational skills and your ability to communicate. Maybe you joined Toastmasters, which is something I did to work on my presentation skills when I was in college, because I was a journalist. And so I had to be in front of the camera, and I'm also shy, which nobody believes. So you had to work on those Toastmaster skills of like being thrown ideas. So think through what you've done in a volunteer capacity. Also think through what you've done with campus organizations and put those experiences there. Here's a third thing you may not have thought about. Your course projects count. You are there in a 3-credit course. You have to meet several times a week. You have to meet with groups outside of class. You are working with a client sometimes, or you're competing among each other in the classroom setting. You can describe your course projects. So I know today was about self-reflection, but I told my colleague, I feel like it's a little bit of an undercover resume writing session. So I'm glad you asked this question. So definitely schedule time with your career advisor, and you all come up with a plan of what makes sense. Because part of that plan could also be networking. So much happens through a conversation, whether that's on Zoom, whether that's an email introduction, whether that's a coffee chat. So I'm a firm believer, because I've gotten quite a few jobs through networking where people already were considering for the opportunity and never even saw my resume. They just happened to hear me speak at an event, or they met me at a networking event, and all of a sudden we're exchanging cards and those opportunities have. So try not to stress too much. I know graduation causes stress because family goes from how's spring break to do you have a job? So definitely find ways for self-care in addition to our self-assessment and self-reflection. But keep hanging in there, Audrey. You'll definitely get it. So I know we're like 45 minutes into the session, and I said at the beginning that I know people have a lot going on. So we'll give it a minute or two to ask questions. Thank you so much for your comment, Audrey. I'm saying that that was helpful. I'm glad it was helpful. And if you all have any additional questions, it's another thing you can do is that if you have a quick question, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is real easy. It's just Parks, Parks at american.edu. And then my colleague will also put the Career Center email address in the chat in case you wanted to find out who your advisor is if you aren't part of the main Career Center. So the beauty is we actually have 4 career centers. We have the Kogod School of Business, we have the law school, we have the main career center, and we have SIS. So I know with all this amazing talent, it takes all of us to support you all. So if you have a question as to my major is this and my minor is this, and I'm in 2 different schools, I'm not sure which advisor, we're happy to lead you in the right direction. Thank you, Delia, so much for your help this evening. It takes a lot to make all these different programs work together and also answer questions in chat. And I thank you all as much for joining us tonight. Have an amazing evening, and don't forget your post work that you get about continue with your self-reflection.
Thank you, Felicia. All right,
Sure.
that concludes our event today. Thank you so much for attending, and please do not hesitate to reach out through email or phone call. Have a great night, everyone.